Hi everyone. Today I want to talk about permanent botanicals and doing some things for fall. It's that time of year where we see a lot of decorations being done like that. And here in the Southwest where I'm at, we really have to make fall come forward because it doesn't really show up in the desert. So it's really kind of fun to be able to create fall. So I wanted to do this beautiful permanent botanical design. And the emphasis that I wanted to do with this is groupings. So I want to talk a lot about that. But I want to start first of all with a glass vase that's in the autumn color, so it's a nice beautiful brown vase. And then I've got styrofoam that has been attached into the center of this vase. If you want to attach it permanently, I just have it kind of tucked down in there. If you want to attach it permanently, use some duct tape and a little bit of pan glue or even hot glue. And attach it to that duct tape will hold it in place. But my styrofoam I would definitely want to cover with some of the moss. So I've got some green moss that I am just hairpinning it in. And then we'll hold it all into place just to cover my mechanics, and that's essential. Mechanics is so vital when it comes to permanent botanicals because they kind of probably go through quite a bit of handling, and then if you want to put it away then for the next season, then you've got to cover it. So make sure your mechanics are really sound and really good, and you're covering all of that styrofoam. So we don't want to see that because that's not very attractive. Now you don't have to use styrofoam. You could use floral foam, you could use Sahara, you could use many different products depending upon what you're attaching. So I'm usually, if I'm using a lot of dry materials, I may use floral foam or Sahara, but with a lot of plastic stems, I'm going to use the styrofoam. So I want to start with my groupings first of all, and I have some of the bunny tails. So I want to place my bunny tails, and what I did is I took about half of the bunch and then just taped it with some of that beige tape, and then I'm just going to use some green picks and I'm going to just pick it in. Now my picks still have wire on them, and I'm just kind of going down through the bunch, but I want to hold those in place. And this is what creates your groupings, and this is what, sometimes with dried, since the stems are so fragile, this is probably the easiest way than to create a dry. I want to get some additional texture and add a little bit of oat grass to this. And again, just using my wood picks with a little bit of wire on them just to hold them into place so that we can create this bonding that's done in the focal area of the design. So making sure that it's there, put one more pick in there just to make sure that it's nice and tight and that it's going to stay put. So you can see the different textures that we have with that. Now what I'd like to do is create my focal area, and I'm going to use some hydrangea, and I'm just going to cut their stems down. Now you could dip this in pan glue and then put it in there, and that would definitely make sure it's going to stay put. Or you can just insert it into the styrofoam and just give it a little bit of a push so that it's there. What the hydrangea does is help cover my focal area, and covering that focal area is essential when it comes to creating depth in the design. So creating that focal brings our eye down into the center. Now I want to just create a little bit more detail here, and I've taken a lotus pod and I've glued, as you can see, I've glued some wood picks into that. So this is going to help now create texture down at my very base, but it's also going to create some detail. So it just takes a little bit just to push those in, and I'm using two so they don't turn. So that helps keep that in that point. I'm also just going to take some additional lotus pods and a little bit of hot glue and just glue those in. So what that does is it holds it right into place. That glue keeps it there. But the other thing that happens is that I get a tremendous textural element when I add that to that very point. So it brings it out. You can see that terracing that we're doing with that. And then I also want to do that to the opposite side. So then I kind of carried that same grouping across, gluing those in. A little bit of a pick sticking out, so let me get rid of him. Sometimes that happens. And then just gluing again. Come here, you. There we go. And of course, it's always a good idea to have a little container of water, if you're using hot glue, right next to you, so that if you do happen to get some onto your fingers, that you can quickly stop the burning sensation. So, okay, so we've added those in. So let's continue our line movements with this. So I want to build this up now. So I've got my focal area kind of created. I've got all my detail with my textures. So then I want to add some branches to this. So we're going to create our line movement. Just using some of the bamboo grass is what this is called, and it's kind of in a beautiful brown tone. And I just want to disperse that through and into the styrofoam just to create my framing that I want to involve. You can kind of go down through the materials that you've already added without any problem and add that in. And this just gives us a little bit of a light line movement that's not very dominant. We'll add to this just to create it a little bit more structurally. So I've got that coming up. And then I have, ooh, this beautiful, this is called a mountain fern that I just want to cut apart. And it's plastic, but it makes a beautiful line movement. This is that softness that we want, and it also just adds line movement. So even though this is out of plastic, it's a very soft line drawn material that gives us that emphasis, and it's really kind of pretty. All right, so I have some of my hydrangea leaves that I just put on wood picks, and I want to kind of add that down to the base now that I've kind of got that space, so that we can see that we're covering up all of our aspects of our foam and our moss. We don't want to see that, so this is going to kind of come down. So we kind of have this a little bit finished towards that end, but we're still adding many more materials to this. So I have that fern added to this. Then I have a beautiful allium that looks like it's gone to seed. And of course, some of these stems are really, really thick. In order to cut them, you really have to a little bit work at it a little bit, but eventually you'll get it. And I love the textures with this. Adding these different textures with these darker tones and these fall tones is where it really takes a beautiful line movement, and it also just, your eye just follows right to it. So now we're going to really emphasize on groupings. We started that with the drieds, but now we're going to come back with our allium and add our grouping to this, and look at that texture that that adds, which is really, really beautiful. I want to come across now and add some color impact. So I want to pull this color out also. So I've got some beautiful branches of bittersweet that I just want to add to this. And just follow that line movement, pulling it down a little bit to the table. And I like using elevated vases, anything like a compote or something on that order that gives me the ability to raise the design up so I can get some beautiful line movements and some beautiful drapes with that. So I think that's just really important. Making sure that you're following your balances, of course, all the principles and elements of design. So we're doing our beautiful groupings with our line movements with bittersweet, letting them do a natural effect. I also want to come across to the opposite side and do that again too. So they have both of these line movements on both sides, but still playing with the groupings and adding those groupings to that very center, which is really makes a visual impact. And that's what makes it strong, is by adding that visual impact to the designs, pulls your eye in so it focuses and stays right where you want it to for a longer period of time. So you kind of get that emphasis on exactly what you want them to see. You want them to see the bittersweet, you want them to see the hydrangea, you want them to see the allium. And by doing that, it adds it all in together. All right. And then manipulate the branches. The one thing with permanent botanicals, the importance of permanent botanicals and making sure that you manipulate them to make them look natural. And that's what you want to do. If you have something that's just really nice and straight, that's not really how it grows in nature. You want to make sure that you have that emphasis that it looks like it's natural and that it's being natural. So doing that. So now I have some permanent botanical nigella that I want to add that green to. And you could put this on a wood pick. You could put it with a steel pick if you wanted to, depending upon what you wanted to add. So depending upon also how stable you want this to be. but I would suggest that most of the time with permanent botanicals that you either glue them in or you pick them in just to make sure that they're going to stay put, because that's the importance of all of this. All right, so let's come across that nigella pulls that color of the grasses in, which is really beautiful. So I have all of my nigella already pre-cut. It just makes it faster for the video. But you can cut them at different lengths. You can put them on different wood picks if you'd like, depending upon the design that you're creating. And I think with a lot of times with natural materials and those, I don't know, that free-form garden kind of feel design, you want your lengths to be random so that you have that natural ability with the design to just create that beautiful line movement and just give it some botanical feel to it. All right, so I also have some crab apples that I wanted to add. Get rid of the rest of this nigella here. Here we go. It's got a beautiful line movement too, so we're going to emphasize on that. And some of this latex foliage, which is really beautiful. And that adds to that. And then I also have some fun raspberries, which pull the color of this vase up. And it gives it that burgundy tone. So we're going into all these fun fall tones. Do a beautiful grouping with the raspberries here. Also pull it to this other side too. Just letting that play into the color palettes all the way across. All right, so I'm going to turn it this way so I can see what I'm doing. I have some that rusty color millet that I want to add to this. And just to kind of give it some more texture. Texture, again, if you've got the same color tone, it's the textures that pull it all together, and that's vital when you're creating these fall colored designs, is adding that luscious texture that gives that depth, it gives it that just detail and that visual appeal where you could just look at the design and you don't even have to touch it so you know what it feels like. That's what's cool to me, is that visual impact that you see. So you can see where we're going with this. So we've got that beautiful impact. I also have some feathers. These are pheasant feathers. And I'm going to need to tape this so I can stick them all together here. The less insertions that you have to make, the better it is. That's faster so that you don't have to worry about doing another insert, another insert, another insert. But if you do them all at once, it gives that fun and faster insertion through the designs. So let me work these through my raspberries. I'm going to do another grouping to the back. Gather them together. Give a little bit of a tape. Follow our line movements, move things around. That's the luxury of permanent botanicals, is that you can make them do what you want them to do. And to me, that's what's really kind of fun, to be able to do that. Now, let me see if I need to add any more detail. I think I want to add one more lotus pod. Right here in the very center, and just gluing him in. And one more. Over on this side. And it's those beautiful textures that we can see. Let's add one more to this other side here. There we go. Ooh, stay put for me, dear. There you go. And of course, if you have any type of glue strings, what you want to do is, there's a couple options. You can use a blow dryer or a heat gun, and that makes it dissolve into the design. Or if you even spritz it with water, you can see them and then pull them out. So that gives you the opportunities. But it's a fast, easy way to create a beautiful design just by using all your groupings. So you can see all the beautiful colors that we wanted to add to our fall groups. The form, the texture, the colors, all create a fall design.